Hello students, I, Sneha Sharma, your English teacher, welcomes you to your English 2 class. Today, we will start the first lesson, Daffodils, a poem written by William Wordsworth. So before we start the poem, let us discuss what daffodils are. So daffodils are brightly yellow colored flowers, and in Hindi it is also called nargis. So let's move on about the poet. William Wordsworth was born on 7th April 1770. He was a great English poet. His great passion was traveling. He had great love for nature. Most of his poems were related to nature. Some of his great works are lyrical ballads, the prelude, etc. In Poem in 2 volumes, there are many notable poems. Among them is Daffodils. This poem, Daffodils, is based on an event which took place on 15th April 1802, in which Wordsworth and his sister Dorothy came across a long belt of daffodils while travelling in the Lake District of England. William Wordsworth was Britain's great poet. He died on 23rd April 1850. So this was all about the poet. So he loved nature and he wrote only about nature. Now let us move on to the theme of the poem. As for the theme, the poem is all about the beauty of nature. Wordsworth is often termed a nature lover. This poem celebrates the love for nature and its beauty. So this poem is full of the beautiful nature and description about the nature and about this flower, daffodils. Nature's beauty is a mix of happiness and loneliness. The poet is shown lonely, but when he thinks back to the dancing daffodils, he is filled with joy. So after seeing those daffodils, after thinking of those daffodils, the poet's mood is changed. So next we will move to the summary of the poem. In this poem, William Wordsworth has narrated his personal experience about a beautiful scene of nature. So here it is all about the description of the beauty of nature, and it is taken from a personal experience of the poet. One fine morning, the poet was walking in the countryside through the hills and valleys, but he felt all lonely. Suddenly, as he passed a lake, he noticed a big group of yellow daffodils waving in the breeze. So what did the poet see? Those yellow daffodils which were dancing with the wave of the breeze. This wasn't just some scattered patch of daffodils. There were thousands and thousands around this particular bay. All these flowers were dancing. Yes, the daffodils danced, and so did the waves of the lake. The speaker's loneliness was replaced by joy, but he didn't even realize what a gift he had received until later. So the poet didn't realize how his mood was changed from sadness to happiness. Now, whenever he is feeling alone and sad, he just thinks of the daffodils and his heart is filled with pleasure. So, Now we have discussed about the poet, the summary of the poem. Now let us move on towards the poem, that is Daffodils, written by William Wordsworth. So we'll start the first stanza. I want that you would keep your books in front of you so that we could discuss it properly. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So, in the first stanza, the poet was traveling aimlessly, just like a cloud. So, as the cloud moves aimlessly, so does the poet over the hills and valleys of mountainous Lake District in England. So, how he was moving like a cloud over the hills and valleys. At that time, suddenly he came across a large number of golden daffodils beside the lake and under the tree. So, where did the poet see the daffodils? It was beside the lake and beneath the trees. The flowers were fluttering and dancing in the breeze. So, what does fluttering means? Moving with light motion. So, the flowers were dancing with the rhythm of the breeze. So, this was the first stanza. In the first stanza, the poet was wandering like the lonely cloud over the hills and valleys. So, let us move to the second stanza. So, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. So the poet all of a sudden saw not once or twice. He saw hundreds of daffodils. It seemed like it was the stars that twinkle in the Milky Way. Here is another simile. So what is a simile? Where we make comparison between two things. Here, the flowers are compared to the stars. They stretched in a continuous line, just like the stars in a galaxy, like the Milky Way. Moreover, the daffodils were shining as they were golden in color and twinkling as the stars. So the daffodils was shining and twinkling just like the stars. This comparison with the stars may have a greater implication in indicating that the flowers are heavenly as the stars. So, just like the stars, the flowers are also heavenly. They are so beautiful. The flowers were visible as far as the poet could see along the shoreline of a bay. So, as far as the poet saw, he saw the flowers. That is why he uses the phrase never-ending line. Never-ending line means wherever he saw those daffodils. It was not ending, it was never ending. Here, continuous and never ending may also suggest that the flower left an everlasting impact on him. So, on the poet, these daffodils have made a everlasting impact. So, the poet could not forget the glance of those daffodils, the beauty of those daffodils. Okay, class, we have discussed about the poet, the theme, as well as the summary of the poem. We discussed stanza 1 and 2. So that's all for today's class. In the next class, we will be discussing the next two stanzas. Thank you.